Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's probably one of those. Welcome to the Chicken Box, powered by the 132-year-old Afro American newspaper. We were called, but we're not a newspaper. We are a news entity, the oldest family owned Black newspaper in the country. And you are on the Chicken Box. And so, welcome. We are so glad that you're here today. Now, this might be your first time viewing the Chicken Box, and I know some of you have been here before, so we want you to weigh in the chat on whatever platform you're watching. But if this is your first time, if you're from the Baltimore area, you know that a Chicken Box is three wings and fries. But we're not talking about that kind of Chicken Box. Our Chicken Box, yes, spelled with two X's, is a time that we get on a platform. This one, Facebook, on YouTube, I think on LinkedIn, and we get on the box and we share our truth, and you get a chance to share your truth. And so I'm Francis Toni Draper, CEO and publisher of the Afro, joined by my wonderful co-host Jay Jackson, who is also with the Afro, and usually joined by our third co-host Impeccable, who may pop in before we are finished. And a shout out to our producer, Asia Perry. We have an exciting show for you today. And
Absolutely.
before Jay introduces our guests, I want to encourage you to, you know, ask somebody to join you today to watch the Chicken Box. We want to encourage you to support the Afro. Go to afro.com. Not during the box. You can do that after the box, because we want you to really not miss not one word of the Chicken Box on today. So Jay, that's it in terms of intro. Glad you're here. Always good to see you, sir. So if you want to say a little bit about yourself and then introduce our guests, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you. So I am Jay Jackson. I am a web editor for the Afro, as well as a co-host of the Chicken Box. So I'm very excited for this conversation. I think it's going to be very interesting. I am a fan of what this person does that's coming on. So if you've ever been to my house, you would know. so. But we are going to be sitting and talking with Claudia Steer, who is an accomplished entrepreneur, business strategist, and interior design expert. She is the founder of NW10. Claudia has built a thriving design consultancy that seamlessly merges branding, strategy, and interior design. Her ability to scale operations effectively is evident, growing NW10's revenue from $200,000 to $1.3 million in just 2024 alone. She has led multi-million-dollar projects across hospitality, commercial, and luxury residential spaces, working with celebrity clients and globally recognized brands. Her work has been featured in Architectural Digest, Rolling Stone, Essence, Billboard, and Home and Gardens, cementing her reputation for creating spaces that blend functionality with cultural resonance. Claudia is a graduate of Duke University with a Bachelor's of Art there. Also, she has a Master's of Professional Studies from Georgetown, and she attended Harrington College of Design. So we're going to bring Claudia out now. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi
Excellent.
there. Go ahead,
So
Jay.
eager.
So hopefully that intro did you justice. I'm sure there's a lot more sort of out there. Um, Claudia, what is your how did you get into or deciding that interior design was your thing? First off.
That is a great question, Jay. And it's so good to be with you and Dr. Draper today. Thanks for having me. I, like in true millennial fashion, have had 77 jobs. So it was a very roundabout path to interior design for me. I was in advertising. I used to be an educator. I was a high school English teacher for a couple of years. I worked in sports for a couple of years. I worked in advertising for 15 years. And then somewhere along the way, interior design chose me. So for those that are people of faith, your talents and your calling will find you eventually. And I believe interior design is mine. And it started out as like I was always a very handy person.
Mhm.
Um, and when I was that friend that people would ask for advice when it came to sort of creative things. And that sort of evolved into decor and decorating at some point. And, it just wouldn't kind of let me go. So at one point I said, all right, God, is this a thing? Like, what are we doing?
Right.
And I decided at some point, I think I should go back to school for this because there's something here that's just tugging at me. And that was about 2012 that I went back to school and started the business in 2014.
Excellent. It's a pretty
Yeah.
good start. So, and just for everybody's knowledge, we are joined by our other co-host. He is here. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Claudia. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you.
I'm in the well-designed buffet. That was the only place I could find the internet. My room wasn't ready. I'm like, goodness, where am I going to do this show at? But welcome to the Chicken Box. I guess it's apropos. It's lunchtime. I'm at a buffet. It's all right, right? It's
Totally.
good. We could talk about the design in the background, how it catches the eye,
Yeah,
or does it?
definitely.
And I'm I'm in the middle of a total makeover too. So I'm here just sucking up all the ideas.
Well, you know what? You raise a great point, because we're making an assumption. What would you say to people who said interior design? What does that mean? We all have our own idea of what is that from your professional lens. What is interior design? And I know we want to talk about the fact that there are not many African Americans in that field either. So tell us, just what is interior design?
That is such a good question, because in the world of the TikToks and HGTV and all the things, there are definitely different lanes. And I think a bunch of things kind of get lumped together sometimes. So thanks so much for asking. I would say interior design is sort of the art of transforming environments to better serve their audience, utilizing colors, textures, fabrics, materials, and the like at its base level. If I gave my own personal definition, I would say it is the art of storytelling with different sets of tools, right? So instead of ink and paper and pen, I am using paint and furniture and fabrics. So that is kind of how I think about it.
Great. So if someone has a project, for example, I heard Impeccable say he's doing a project and he's listening intently. At what point does the interior designer enter into that conversation?
That's a very good question. So depending on the scale of the project, a designer comes in at different spaces. So if there's construction involved, in an ideal world, the designer is coming in pretty early, because there is both the art and the science of design. And I think sometimes people think more so about the art of interior design versus the science and the psychology of interior design. And, a contractor is thinking about layouts and things from a very different lens than the way that an interior designer would look at it, which is very different from the way that an architect would look at it, which is very different than how an engineer would look at it. So because I think the interior designer brings a very human-centered lens into the process. An architect or an engineer might be thinking very heavily about the efficiency of a space, right? What makes the most for the amount of square footage so I can optimize how much things can go here. Where a designer is thinking, but how do you live in that though, right? Like, what does that feel like to be in it though? And like experience it every day. And those things don't always come to the same conclusion. So ideally, you've got an interior designer coming in pretty early in the process, Dr. Draper. I think that lens about thinking about the human experience should be considered much earlier than it typically is, I would say.
And that lend to things like color theory and things like that, as far as,
For sure.
yeah, I remember reading about that years ago, and I was like, why does that even matter? And then they're like, well, maybe you don't want to paint your kitchen red, right? Like these like very intense colors. Like, is that what you want to be spending your time? Like always like wanting to ravenously eat? And I was like, does that work? And then I learned like casinos paint their hallways certain colors that are more relaxing, so you stay there. And I was like, okay, that makes total sense. Right? Like, so things like that I don't think people think about too deep.
Yeah, Jay, that is like so spot on, right? And it's something that we all feel and have experienced, even if we're not conscious about it, right?
Exactly.
Like we all know that when we are in a hospital, right, there is nothing particularly comfortable or warm, rightfully or wrongfully, about that experience, right? It's like it's cold, it's sterile, and you want to get out as soon as possible, and that's design doing that. Like that's not by accident. Right?
They want to get you in and out.
They want to get you in and out. They don't want you to be comfortable in there, rightfully or wrongfully, right? When you go to certain restaurants and you see a color palette over and over and over again, like that is not by accident. You're right. You hit it on the head with red creating, cravings and making you think about hunger. And so if that's like very prevalent, you may order more than you even want, because when you're in there, it's designed to tap into some of those very deep, intrinsic, like psychological needs that most people are not thinking about every single day. So you are totally, totally spot on when it comes to that level of like thinking and strategy that goes into making some of these decisions.
Thank you so much. Listen, if you're just tuning in, this is the Chicken Box, powered by the 132-year-old Afro-American newspaper. We just go by Afro News. Go to afro.com, check us out, get a subscription. And we are here having a fascinating discussion with Claudia Steer. Claudia, what's the name of your business? It is NW.
Yes, NW10.
NW10. Yes. NW10. I'm so tell us a little bit about that name, and then I know this is another different kind of question. Sure. You've done some very impactful work, so I want you to tell us about the one that you shared with me, a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, awesome. So NW10 is actually the name of my business, but also the zip code or area code where I grew up in London, England. Okay, so I don't sound like it, but I am a Brit.
No, I was gonna say it. I said that sounds like a UK. I was just holding back, but go ahead.
Yes. So I don't sound like it, but if you catch me after Christmas, after I visited family, the accent makes an appearance from time to time. But that is where I grew up. It is a predominantly Black neighborhood, or was when I was growing up, and a predominantly working class neighborhood. And I remember that's my first recollection of how space could define how you feel. I remember, I won't go into all the details, but I had a childhood that wasn't ideal. And I remember seeking sort of safe spaces outside of my home. And like one of my favorite places to be outside of school, because I was a nerd and still am, was the library. And the library on the high street, I spent a lot of time there. And I felt like I could be my full self there. And it was the first time I remember saying, oh, wow, you could really be made to feel a certain type of way depending on where you were and how it was sort of like designed. And so my business is an ode to that, to always keep that front and center, that spaces can transform people. I try to bring that to my projects all the time.
Let's talk about the project.
And then the project, yes. So
a lot of projects, but the one that you shared.
I'm hoping I'm remembering the right one. But I recently, at the end of last year, had the privilege of working with the Prince Estate and Airbnb, reviving the Purple Rain House in Minnesota. So for those that like I know some of us aren't old enough to remember the movie, but it is a classic from the 80s. Yes, it is. And pretty much catapulted Prince's career as we know it. And the house had, pretty much been sitting for a while, and it was the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain last year. And they wanted to find a way to like honor the contributions that the movie and the space has made to culture. And I was privileged to be the creative lead and the design lead for that project. And super, super proud of that one.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the one.
Super proud. So yeah. Lots of stress, by the way, lots of stress for that one, because I don't know how much you guys know, but like Prince was a very private person, right? That was well documented that he was very private. And so the pressure, I feel like, to honor his legacy was very, very, very high and do it justice for someone who typically would not have been that public with his personal space. So yeah, the pressure to get it right was not lost on me. But it went well, I would say. So that's a good thing.
Excellent. I have a question for you. So you talked about your roots and sort of where you kind of got into architectural or not architectural design, but interior design. Mm-hmm. Where does that sort of connect in with like going to your website, seeing sort of these very Black American cultural touchstones? I see quotes from Issa Rae and things like that on some of your work. Where does that connection come in, right? Because interior design can just be, oh, let's just make it, have an interesting style or something like that. But your work is very much influenced clearly by your background and by Black culture very specifically.
Yeah.
When does the moment happen for you that it's like, I'm not just doing interior design, but I'm doing very Black centric interior design?
Got it. That's a great question, Jay. I will say that I don't know if it was intentional to make it Black centered, but it's a lot easier to come from an authentic place. And that has been my experience, right? So it's rooted in that. But I would say while I was in school for design, it became very evident to me that like the contributions or the perspectives of Black experience, minority experience was pretty much void from what you're learning. There was no reference, if any at all, to like, architectural contributions by people of color, anything like that in school. And it was just like, where are we? It really sort of hit home in school that like, okay, either there's an erasure or just a lack of documentation of what the Black experience and, the non-Eurocentric experience has been in this category. And so once I figured that out, I was like, this just isn't right. Like, I feel when you start to understand like how much a space impacts like so much of our lives, like subconsciously, right? Like how spaces are designed, like how you feel, how you perform, how you rejuvenate. Like there's so much that the space contributes to our well-being. And to have this sort of erasure for like broad swaths of people, not just Black people, brown people too, it was just glaring to me. And I was like, everybody deserves to belong.
Yeah, to see yourself in those spaces.
See yourself in your spaces and see yourself in the world and that you occupy. Like that's a right. Like that's not a privilege. That is a right. And so I just felt it, if there's one part I could contribute to, like if I could make a contribution to help more people feel seen in their spaces and places, then that's what I feel like I've been called to do.
Right. Like it's so funny as you're saying that, just this idea of seeing yourself in these spaces that you occupy all the time. I'm just reminded of the scene from like Do the Right Thing, right? Where like Bugging Out is like yelling at Sal, like, why ain't there no Black people up on the wall? Like, we're your entire client base. We are the people who live in this neighborhood. You are here. And like, why don't we see ourselves? Right. I mean, he was going a little crazy, but like at the same time, like his point is valid. And so to that, like it's interesting. Like you don't have this conscious effort necessarily to be like, let me just make this like super black. But
Right.
at the same time, it's like you can't help it because it pours out of you because that is in fact who you are. Right.
Yeah. Like I've had clients who are like, it's so funny. A lot of my clients in the early days were like people who have tried other designers and then found me, right? Because it's not just about, you can have the right sofa, you can have the right side table. That in and of itself does not make a space feel like you.
Right.
And it was like, they don't get me. You know, I had a client, you know,
Right.
she's from Brooklyn and Jamaican, and she was like, they don't know how to bring that to life for me. Right.
Yeah, 'cause
And
it's not a part of their culture.
it's
Right.
not a part of their culture. And so I have this, you know, I do talk about it as my superpower. I mean, I studied human behaviors for a long time, making money for brands and stuff. So I've now taken that learning and I'm like, okay, how does that manifest itself in a way that resonates with someone that has this cultural background, you know? And it's just, it just works. It works. And I think, yeah, it's something that I'm super, super proud of. And I love for my client base to this point to have been driven by a lot of, you know, black people seeking to see themselves more in their spaces. Like, you know, we live in such a harsh world, right? And it's one space, specifically homes, that we actually get to control. And most people don't bother. It's such actually a missed opportunity to take care of ourselves. If I may be so frank, where it's like, yeah, you get one safe space, and you know you should have it work harder to be for you. And I think one of the biggest grievances I had is like going into people's homes who I know personally, know really well, and not seeing them reflected in their homes. I'm like, I can't believe you live here. I know you.
Right.
I know you, but don't see you in your space. That just is like the gravest injustice for me. Like
Yeah. Generically printed
yeah.
IKEA paintings on white walls.
And I promise you, again, it's like, this is the chicken box, so we could go there, but it's like, I see it so much with Black folks and people of color. It's let's do what's popular. Let's kind of do what's trendy, but it doesn't feel authentic at all. And, you know, in some spaces that's okay, but your home, like personal spaces, it just feels like a really missed opportunity. So I try.
Well, I can tell you one thing. My sister, she loved purple growing up, and so her room, even if the rest of the house wasn't like it was supposed, she was gonna be in that purple room, and that was her. That was her say. So do colors do different things for different people?
Oh,
Claudia?
for sure. Like if you are a creative person, there's a palette for that. You know, if you are a thinker, a deep thinker, there's a palette for that. Like, and that's the thing, but that's what's beautiful about design, because you can curate spaces to help you be at your best, whatever that is for you, you know?
So whoever that, let's say that personality, is that same color for that same personality across the palette?
That's a good question. No, I wouldn't say so, because we're not always in that space all the time, you know? So a person
But
that's
maybe
creative,
those different hues, maybe.
yeah. So a
And
person,
go ahead,
because a
I'll let
person
you go.
that's creative, right?
Yeah.
Isn't creative all the time. They still need to rest. They still need to rejuvenate. And so there's different colors for that. So restful colors are different from creative colors, which are different from restorative colors. Like, so even in a home, there should be, I think, a palette that sort of caters to, you know, the multifacetedness of your experience, you know? But you don't have to be boring with it, you know, like we are not boring people. I think, you know, Black folks are like some of the most creative people. So I think we can find expressions that feel true to us, and yet still meet these basic, like intrinsic human needs, you know?
If you just tuned in, this is the Chicken Box Room with Claudia Steer, the designer extraordinaire. If you've been just thinking about changing just your closet or your bathroom, It's like, come on and get started. And, I don't know if everybody has watched it, but I think everybody has watched some type of HD TV show, right? That you get caught up in, either do it yourself or, man, I didn't know that my wall could come down and I could have much more space in the same space. What's your feeling on? Are we underrepresented on those shows?
Ooh. So I will say, I don't
It's
watch
gotten better. Go ahead.
It has gotten better. I will say that. These shows have a formula, right? And you guys know, when folks figure out what works, it's rinse, repeat, right? And so I would say that it definitely, I will say I don't watch a lot of HGTV, admittedly, because I like to run my own race. And sometimes you got to put blinders on to be able to like just sift through the noise and run your own race. So I will offer that disclaimer.
So I haven't talked to Dr. Draper about this.
Okay.
But Claudia Steer, we might need to have our own show called Run Your Own Race. With Claudia Steer, powered by the Afro TV. How you like that? That would be dope.
Amazing.
that would be Run Your Own Race.
Run your own race.
You like it?
I love it. And listen, but Impeccable and Claudia, you're really onto something about the formula. I did a reality show that was on I can't remember what it was on. It wasn't Netflix, but it was on one of the streaming services, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a makeover of a business.
Okay.
But it did involve some interior design, right? And so it was called the Small Business Revolution. And so, but the way it's set up, when you see it on television, they try to make it look like, okay, this is like a natural progression from this to this, but it's set up with a goal in mind, right? And so you film a whole lot of things, and then when people say, "Oh wow, look at the makeover," well, we've seen the makeover. It's all filmed in a very short space,
Correct.
but it makes it look like it's so because it's entertaining a lot as well.
That's right.
However, to piggyback on what you're saying, Impeccable, we don't see our representation of whether it's the beachfront they got all these shows on them, buy the house for one price, and you've got a renovation budget of this, and you've got that. Well, the way those shows work now, they have sponsors. Since you're thinking about a show, there's sponsors that would pay a Claudia. They pay the design because the designer gets paid.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
And then the people that are doing the makeover, they have to have a certain budget to kick into it too. Yeah. But you're onto something, Impeccable. I don't see why we couldn't. I bet there are a lot of people who, knowing your skill set, Claudia, and maybe others who are in the profession to take it all the way through. We probably could have our own show. Put Lenora's comment back up. Whoever's Jay or see.
I was mostly when I built my house, I was very intentional.
Yeah,
I think it is. I know that, and Miss Lenora, probably that came at a cost, right? Like, especially in resale and stuff like that, there's lots of conversations about the impact of that. But it is also, I think, a testament to like affirming your experience. Like, this is how we live. This is how we exist. This is how we, feel safe in our personal spaces, and other people need to see that. And Impeccable, to your question about HGTV, I think not every designer, the industry doesn't always take the approach of design being that serious. Like, it's just aesthetics. It's just pretty stuff, right? Like, that is a very popular sort of mindset versus the deep impact it has on how you live. So not everybody thinks about it like that. So if you don't, having a Black perspective isn't seen as that valuable, because it's like, doesn't everybody like that beige sofa? Doesn't everybody like that, whatever it is, because it's just design, So that's, I think, part of what gets missed, and why the Black lens or the Black perspective may be a little undervalued in media, because they just don't think it's that serious. But it's a shame because hopefully I don't get fired for saying this, right? But it's like, but they know it matters, right? Because hotels, commercial spaces go through deep psychological and consumer research and all these things to make sure that they're delivering on needs and states. It's designed that way. Restaurants do it to make you buy things. Like, it's so people know that it has a deep impact. But I think in the space of residential, it kind of gets downplayed a little bit, because like Dr. Draper said, like, it's a business and there's, a lot of times an agenda, rightfully or wrongfully.
But it also brings up the point, though, when people go to resell their homes.
Yeah.
How many times have we heard people say, realtor said to me, take all my Black art down, put away all of my Black photo.
Yep.
I mean, what do you say about that?
It's funny. And I see this because a lot of times clients will actually not make decisions because they're thinking about the resale value right out the gate. And this is not particularly a popular perspective, Dr. Draper, but I'm like, as long as you live there, it should be designed for you to live there. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I've heard people say, oh, I could never do my kitchen. I got to have white cabinets because of the resale value. Well, for 10 years, you're just going to live with something that you don't care like that much for resale value 10 years from now. Like, that's not a way to live. Like, and so I think it's the value of an experience that makes you feel at your best is more important than the resale value. And again, that's not a popular opinion, I'm sure. But I definitely think people should prioritize the experiences they have while they are there and not be thinking about this future state all the time to guide their decisions. Because one, research shows that people stay in a home much longer than they think they are. So they buy a home thinking they're only going to be there for 3 years, or they buy a condo for 3 years, and then you end up there for 7 years. So for 7 years, you're just living in this purgatory of having mixed feelings about the choice you made. I just don't think it's a way to live. So
yeah, it's funny. Go ahead.
No, so everybody thinks differently, but I'm laughing because I lived in 3 houses in 10 years. And each house I said, I'm not going to do nothing to this house because I know it's not the house I'm going to be in. So I said, I'm not going to put anything into this house. It's going to be whatever it is. I'm not going to hang nothing on the wall. I know it sounds crazy. I heard myself talking. But to Claudia, it's like insanity. To me, it's like, but now where I moved, everything had to go. Mm-hmm. The bathroom, the bathtub, the floor, the fireplace, everything must go. It was like a liquidation sale.
Yeah. Listen, Impeccable, you are not alone. I hear this all the time. And I will say this is also a cultural thing. Now, hear me out, right?
Right.
There is something about only investing in things you own that is, I think, a uniquely Black, brown, cultural dynamic.
I owned all of them, but still.
Yeah, it's a thing. Like, it's like, well, I don't own it. Oh, I'm only going to be there 3 years, so I'm not going to invest in it. But your life, like, and this is coming from someone who has rented for a significant portion of her life and is very pro rent, and who designs every single time. Like, I have painted ceilings and put wallpaper in the bathroom, and I go in because, as far as I'm concerned, this is my safe space. And as long as I'm here, it's mine. And I want it to make me be at my best, But I will say Black and brown folks are very reticent to invest in things they don't own. And so they wait. But think about that. You may not buy, if you're 25 years old, you may not buy a home until you're 30, 35, 40, 45. So for 15, 20 years, you're just not going to be in great spaces that serve you. that's something that I'm really passionate about, and I wish our people would just.
Well, you waking us up today,
I
Claudia.
hope so. I mean, because it
I hope
always
y'all better share this with somebody because we need to wake up and change that space,
it matters.
change the state.
Well, you know, impeccable. I'm woke. Every place I've gone, I've just made it whatever I wanted to be.
Yep.
Amen.
And orange walls, red walls. My husband and I, we've done whatever.
Everything.
You know that already. We've done everything. Now, you know, when it comes time to sell, or if we were renting, we had to figure it out. Right? You have to put it back to the way
Right.
they had it. But
Right.
I'm with Claudia. You know, when you come into your home, you know how people, and usually it's really for, a lot of times it's for guys who say, you know, my home is my sanctuary. Women too, but I've heard a lot of guys say, my home is my sanctuary. There's so much confusion out there. When I go home, I need peace.
Oh,
And I and that's why people build man caves and other things that they can just kind of. I see you're thinking they can. Yeah.
Don't forget about the she shed.
She sheds, man caves.
Right.
We spend more time decorating babies' rooms than we do our own.
It's
beds.
a thing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I agree with you, Claudia. And people say, well, that's costly, but everything's costly.
Yeah. It's a
which reminds me. So, Claudia, what do you say to people? And I'm not asking for an amount.
Okay.
But you say, well, you know what? I don't need the interior designer person kind of thing. You know, I'm just going to do me.
Right. Right. Oh, Dr. Draper. Okay. What would I say? It's a missed opportunity, because sometimes the right designer will get to understand you through this lens of design better than you can do it yourself, right? So one of the things when I'm working with a client, like I'm constantly observing. I can see when you're talking about something and you light up. I can see when your mood shifts, when you talk about something else, and all that stuff starts to serve as fodder. What's the right color? What's the right palette? What's the right shape of things that are better going to serve this need that is probably not in the average person's like consciousness? They're not thinking about it that way. They're not necessarily thinking this color with this natural light direction is not going to look the same. We're thinking about it that way, right? You're not thinking about because like, for example, this is one thing I hear. Our people love them some like very rich colors, right?
Yep.
Deep mustards and oranges and like burgundies. Like we are a very saturated color kind of people typically, right? But you got to know if you're trying to rest, that is not going to serve you. Like the red room or the orange room, it's too high energy that you're not going to get good sleep in that room. But without a designer, generally speaking, some of that stuff gets lost on you. The psychology of design, the science of design, I think gets lost. And that's, I think, a bit of my frustration with HGTV is that it focuses a lot on the art of design. And it's just like how it looks. And I think from my experience, you can have the perfect sofa, the perfect furniture, the perfect artwork, and it still not feel like home at the end of the day. And that is where a designer comes in, because our job is to make sure that you feel at home.
Which is so interesting, because a lot of times people design for other people.
They do.
They design for what's it going to be for the person that visits my home? Well, they may only visit at Christmas.
Oh, Dr. Draper, you just gave me chills. No lie, because that is also a thing. Like it can sometimes be performative for people. Like it's just like, the guest room is a perfect example, right? It's like you need an office, right? You have someone coming to visit once or twice a year, and yet you are going to forsake a need you have on a day-to-day basis for the sake of having something that someone else can enjoy 2 times a year. And I think the putting, and that's such a thing of sometimes we put ourselves second so many times that when you get an opportunity to put yourself first, it feels uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable for us to say, no, this home could be about me and mine. That's okay. My guests can sleep on the sofa for 2 days. That's okay. Like, it feels uncomfortable for people to put themselves first a lot of times. It's really, I think, a bit unique to those that have had history of having to put themselves behind somebody else. That's just been
I'm
my
gonna bounce past it to Jay, but we talking good now, y'all, for real. We talking about the mindset of design. This is the Afro, the 132-year-old media company that tells wonderful Black story with a Black designer who really calls herself a design storyteller, Claudia Steer. She's trying to steer us in the right direction today, y'all. Open up your minds. I'm like, wait a minute. My guest room is gone now. It's now a podcast studio. Later for the guests. I'm sorry, Ma. I mean,
That's all right. I got my own space.
Claudia, if you didn't know, and everybody else didn't know, that Dr. Draper is my mother. Anyway.
Okay, great.
Jay Jackson, jump in. Anyway, come on. All right. I know it's whatever. Anyway,
Long kept secret. So Claudia, I'm glad you talked about that. This idea of our community having this sort of long set kind of thought process of not wanting to do for ourselves, just because historically, we could go down that rabbit hole for forever. But you talked about like this idea of not wanting to invest in a place you don't own, right? Like, which I feel like comes from that mindset comes from sort of scarcity of having these things, right? So you're like, all right, we don't have a lot of money. We have very limited resources historically. And now that you may have some resources that you can use, it seems like you're, not to like kind of trivialize it, but it feels like you're using these resources for something that is not deeply important, right? Like I may be in this house for 5 years. I may be in this house for 30 years. I don't know. So let me just kind of hedge my bets. Yeah. I mean, the houses that my wife and I have owned, like we did a penny floor in one of the bathrooms, and in a different house, like we do a bunch of stuff, like, for the first time in a long time, we're actually renting. But yeah, I mean, if your house is not a home, to use that, turn of phrase, you do miss a lot of who you are, what your culture is, and everything else. Like my house have always been this 50-50 mix of my wife's culture, which is Indian culture, and Black American culture. So there's like, there are these Indian pieces that are, that we've gotten, and then there's like Black art from Baltimore, from like local artists and stuff like that. So there's always this sort of mix. And I feel like people would come to our house, are like, this is like a museum that you can live in. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point, right? Like you can touch stuff, like don't touch it too much, but like you can touch stuff, but it feels like human beings actually live there, right? It is a representative of who we are. So I do think, while it's a very good thing to just have that idea of like, all right, we got to make sure we got all our resources, because you never know, because the world, it can be very uncertain, especially now, but also knowing that you do have this safe space, and you do have to invest something in it, so that even though with all the craziness in the world, you can shut that front door and go, this is where I live, this is who I am, this is, I feel comfortable. So I think it's a very good point to take away, just like, does this picture look good? Does this couch look good? Does this end table look good here? Does this paint color look good? Versus, does this work for who I am? Does it make me feel comfortable? And I think a lot of times interior design is always seen as like some, not to be too much of a jerk about it, but like some weird white lady coming in and be like, you have to put this lamp here, and then the feng shui, and it'll all work. And people are like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, right? But there is more to it, right? There is this ability to make everything actually comfortable for you.
So let's do an actual experiment on Claudia's screen right now. Okay. So if we were just looking, let me like blow her up, right? So if we were just looking at her screen, and we were saying, Claudia. Now, some people might have just seen Claudia and her beautiful face and her radiant character, and then others might have seen what color wall would you say that is behind you?
Oh, that is like a Mauve meets
Mauve.
taupe.
I was gonna say taupe, but I couldn't even remember how to spell taupe, so I stopped for a second, and then to our left and your right, what are they called? Is it drapery?
Yes,
what
the drapes. Good job.
oh
Impeccable.
shucks,
Hey.
wow, taupe to the drape, and then so
And the drapes
so
pick
what
up
was
the
your
picture. The
uh,
picture.
color in the picture, as well as on the sleeves of the picture, as well as the brown on the
Yes.
wrist of the lady. I'm assuming we can't see the whole picture, but let me let you describe what room you're in and how this room makes you feel.
Got you. I wanted to try and shift the camera, can't move.
No, we got it. We got it.
So I'm in my office. My new office in Baltimore. By the way, guys, I am like committed to this city. But it was really important for me. I have a staff of 3, and it was important for me to be in a space where I felt like I could go from day to evening. I wanted this to be a community space. I wanted it to be a place where I could pick colors that would allow me to be calm. And like, it's a very stressful kind of like high intensity industry. Lots of moving parts, and it can be quite frenetic. And I wanted a calm in my workspace. But I also wanted it to feel welcoming for my clients. I live in an office. I work in an office building where there's other creators. And so I wanted to be able to host my community, have wine downs on a Friday evening. And like, so I wanted the colors to sort of be able to feel warm and welcoming and almost cozy for these different kind of use cases. So, but I also wanted to affirm myself every day. So yes, there's lots of Black women in my office, and photos and things to remind me that I'm powerful and I can do all things. And, it's important. So I wanted to see myself and reflected in the space also.
Well, thank you. I know I'm in a public space.
Okay.
I was wondering, could you do the same? Dr. Draper's in a I think a green screen space.
Right. 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 But I'm loving Jay's background there. I can see some of those cultural nods. Like there's clearly passion points. I would make some assumptions about, whether it's Marvel or, all the things. But
that's
also
Japanese calligraphy.
Yes, which I actually lived in Japan for a little while. So I was like, that looks familiar. So again, it's like nods of like interests or passions that I was picking up. And I love that. We should.
These walls are. I'm not allowed to paint in my office. This is not my house. This is
okay.
an office building. I'm just.
And that's how you do it, though, right? Yeah. Like, so there's still ways to do it where you don't have to replace the tile, but you can hang things on the wall, Mr. Impeccable over there. Like versus having them sit on the floor collecting dust for 6 months, which is what a lot of people do. There are ways.
You can use command strips if you're afraid to put holes in the wall.
We can work it out. But Jay,
you can put holes in the wall. You can put holes in the wall and get some toothpaste after. Never mind.
Listen,
old school. That's right.
Hey, I didn't say it. I just wanted that wasn't me.
Fair enough.
But no. But Jay, you said something earlier, and I don't want to forget it because again, it's like one of those cultural things where I'm sure all of us can attest to like growing up. And it's so funny, even though I grew up in London, my family's from the West Indies, like how some things just apply to the diaspora across the board, right? Sure. And it's like that room that was so well curated that nobody could go in, right? It had the best china, the best sofa, the best furniture with the plastic on it. You looked at it, nobody sat in it, and it applies across the board. And so if you think about that as a child, right? Like, dang, these nice things I can't touch. These nice things I can't sit on. So it's this weird, and so many of us experience that where it's like, if it's nice, it's untouchable. Like it's not for me. And then we grow up and have less of a understanding or appreciation of why these things are okay to have, because we couldn't touch them for a really long time. You know, it's just such a fascinating thing. The stories about that we're subconsciously like reinforcing generation after generation. I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that, but you said something and it reminded me of that. Like, man, that is such a thing.
Absolutely. Look, here's my opinion. I'm very glad that whatever generation, I guess it was like my parents' generation, that the plastic on the couch situation has died. That is totally fine. We have dehydrated enough children in the middle of the summer by having the plastic on there. We can just let it go. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, y'all are on a roll today. Dehydrated the children. Good Lord. The children used to get cut when that plastic got right on the corner.
Absolutely.
Don't wear no shorts on the plastic couch. Guys, if you can relate, put your hands up. If you're thinking about it, the design, Claudia Steer, put a website up.
Oh.
I love the fact that she gives us a chance to think about it, because a lot of times it's just copy. Okay, I'm gonna be a copycat instead of. Now, my wife will tell you, Claudia, during our design right now, she has left it all to me.
Oh, bless.
Right. So I'm in my mind's eye, not in my talent. I like ultra modern, what I mean?
Yep.
But I like home designs that were designed earlier, because everything I think of the new homes are cookie cutter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I stay in a lot of hotels, and I think I get inspired. She's like, "You're always talking about the hotel." Like when I come into the room, I'm like, "Wow!" Like they did all of this with this little 280 square foot space.
For sure.
That I would never think of. And then it's like it's the smallest room in the house. Like we grew up in a Baltimore townhouse, quote, row house. That room seems so small, but yet the hotel room, they are like spinning it around.
Yeah.
Have you had an experience with taking that tiny space and making it great space?
That is that your I spent a lot of time in New York City, guys. So small spaces.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
Okay. I have lived in a 400 square foot studio when I first started the business, and I quit my job and I had to, cut expenses. 400 square feet. And I promise you, I had dinner parties. I had karaoke nights at my place. I made it work. But yes, small spaces sometimes does force you to get creative. And again, our people, like we have done a lot with a little for a really long time. So it is something that I think so many of us know how to do, that you don't have to have these sprawling estates to take the time. Like you said, we experience it in hotels all the time. They find a way to like really maximize the space. And yeah, in my apartment, I remember, I had a sectional in there, and you look at the space and you're like, how do you possibly fit a sectional in here? And, the trick with small spaces is sometimes you have to lean into the fact that it's an intimate space, right? And just make it more intimate. Like instead of trying to well, it's a small space, so the sofa should be small and the table should be small. It's actually, well, this is an intimate space. What do I have to do to make this feel like an intimate space? And so I had a sectional. Now I only had like 3 pieces of furniture, but I made sure that they were going to make the place feel intimate, and it's definitely possible to work with small spaces. That's actually one of my favorite things to do, because you have to get real creative. I built a divider with storage at the bottom, and I had a Murphy bed, and like you really have to get very creative. But it's possible. It really is possible.
I think we're gonna need a part 2 on this design thing, because I think our community is really ready for some design changes and renos, especially with the climate today and the uncertainty of the rates. A lot more people are deciding and choosing to stay instead of go.
Yeah.
So
You know,
Asia, our producer, if you can figure out a time, maybe we could come back because I think we're just beginning to wake up. I think
yeah,
all of us, even people listening, or at least I know all of us here, learned something new about just the approach of design today.
I love that.
Uh,
That's awesome.
and
I'm like
and
really
that's what it's really all about.
for sure.
Just
And
just
because people
finding a
serve,
different.
by the way.
Yeah, you can't just have be in the room, grow up that you can't touch, and then
Yeah.
you grow up and you bring those things into your house, and then you never make it a home.
Hmm.
Like Jay said, like he was listening to some Luther. Jay
Exactly. That was the quote.
pull some old Luther out. So
No,
so it's
so
about we're about 5 minutes left. This is where we really get on the box and stand on whatever you want to stand on, but we're standing on a little design today.
yeah.
I'm gonna start with Jay. Come on,
Okay.
Jay, you got it too. I would love to see your collage or your mixture, or
Uh, yeah.
your Indian African fusion.
Yeah. I'll send. Maybe I'll find some pictures from when we sold our house the last time. So,
Uh,
so I guess for me, I think just that idea that you had touched on, Claudia, of it not just being about what something looks like, but what is the psychology behind it, I think is really important. And I think it's a thing people just don't think about, right? It's like, yeah, I just like this thing. It's like, you might actually like it a little bit more than you realize for different reasons, right? And I think this is one of those kind of topics that just exist. And then people just kind of, they sort of tangentially know, like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but they don't really dig into it. And I think having somebody that you're working with that is from the culture that you're from, and I think the world is getting like simultaneously much smaller, but we're kind of realizing that community matters a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah.
Having somebody from your community, even in aspects like this that maybe you haven't delved into super deeply, you realize like, oh, maybe there is a real benefit and there is a real closeness of tying my community into sort of all aspects of what's going on. So I think that's deeply important. So I appreciate your work. I think that's
Awesome.
I think you're opening a door for people that people didn't realize was there, but that door has always been in their house, but it was just a guest room, but now they can make it an office, right? So
Awesome.
so I appreciate your work. That's a very, very cool conversation. Thank
So
you
much, Jay, for sure. This has been a
absolutely, Dr. Draper,
Hey, Claudia, thank you
you're
so
on
much.
the box.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. I think the thing that you really hit home for me today, and I've always felt this way, but I think you give people permission to do what makes them feel most comfortable, right? And so you don't have to, sometimes when people think about interior design, it says, well, I've got to go get whatever the book is called and, pick out this and have it the same way all the way through my house, right? I'm always been an eclectic person, as Impeccable will tell you. So you might find all kinds of color. You might find all kinds of mixture of furniture. It depends, because it may be my grandmama's chair over here, right? But my modern piece over there. But I like that I have one room in my house that's all vintage, because there were people that meant something to us family wise, and it's just like that's just that room. It's just like that. And you give people also permission to say, you know what? You don't have to like what I like. You might not want what Jay has on his wall, but that's Jay's wall.
Right.
He can put on his wall what he wants. You can put on your wall what you want. The background that I have here, which is a green screen, that's not what I would want in my house. It worked for this broadcast, right? But it's not what I'd want. This not because it's too sterile for what I would want, right? Because sometimes we want to have. Some of us think we have to have the sterile, perfect space, and as you said so effectively, we're building it for somebody else. We're building it for who's going to visit. We're building it for who's going to stay overnight for 3 nights out of the year, instead of designing it for, you know what, this is what I like. If you don't like it, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in my space. So I think that gives people permission, and it doesn't necessarily give you permission to, um, well, it does. It's your thing. Do what you want to do, right? There's an old song like that. It's your thing. Do what you want, but it doesn't give you permission to criticize somebody else's space.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't have to accept the invitation to their space. You don't have to show up unannounced to their space. You might not have painted your walls purple, but Prince said my song was Purple Rain, and I want purple.
Right. The
Okay.
end.
That's the end, right?
Awesome.
And when I go to sell it, if I want to take my black art down, I will. If I don't want to take it down, I won't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that liberates people from a lot of things, right? A, I don't have to keep up with anybody. B, I can do what makes me feel comfortable. But more importantly, what you said that I want to highlight before I kick it back to Impeccable is there's a science and an art. Mm-hmm. So the art is, this is what I like. But the science says, this is how it may make me feel within the confines of what I like. So there's an art and a science. It's a profession. Interior design is a profession that a lot of times we either overlook or dismiss, and there are not many of us in that space. So I'm glad you're in that space.
Awesome.
I'm off the box.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank everybody else: Shannon, Lenore, Rico, Helen, anybody else who's been just commenting today and getting inspired to do something. Shannon says she's about to transform her space right now. Or not right now, but she's in the mindset to really go out and do it. My final words for today is, and I'm glad Claudia, I should have had this show 10 years ago. But anyway, I always like to say, be where your feet are. You know what I mean? A lot of times we're every space else. So if you're at work, be at work. If you're at home, be at home. If you're with your kids, be there. And nothing's promised to us tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're going to, I like the part that you said, the mental feeling of your space being a place of, especially for men, peace, and we man cave it out. And is it really peaceful down there? I don't know, you know what I mean? Because it gets sporty after a while, right? So, and we get charged up about sports anyway. Most man caves are more sports driven than they are cavey, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If it's a word. I don't even want to be in the cave. It's cold, dark. And then, but I would just say, one, thank you for opening us up to a new perspective of the way to think. And you might say, man, if I could transform one space in my house that was my peaceful space to get started, my day could be a lot better. My family could be a lot better. My life, my mental health could be a lot better. I could go out and do my whatever my career is a little better. I think if design allows you to do that, I think you have a real big gift, Claudia. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be out. It's more than design. It's pretty much about changing people's mindset. Yeah. So the new show is called The Mind of Design, okay? We changed it, all right?
Received and claimed.
I have it all recorded. So they're like, well, who was the executive producer? It was Impeccable. Of course, he thought about it, right?
I'll give you credit.
But I knew you were the right person to bring it home. But awesome. I do think that we need more shows that talk about where we live from our lens that's not being shown. And maybe it's us to do it. Yeah. So thank you for sparking the new creative juices. So Claudia, you are now officially on the box.
Well, one, I want to thank you guys for just having me, for entertaining this conversation, and for being like active participants and being willing to think about things differently, because a lot of people are not. So thank you for this space and the place to do that. I'm on the box. I want to tell all my people that you deserve. You deserve you deserve. Because I think there is this underlying thing that, like, we're not worthy to have some of the things that are just good for us just because, and I just want to encourage people to really take some time to think about what best serves them. Design really requires you to do a lot of soul searching, to really get to know and understand yourself. And that's work a lot of people aren't doing. When you work with a designer, this is kind of the value that comes with that when you get a good designer. So if you are working with a designer, folks, allow them to be best at their craft. If you are coming to the table with Pinterest boards that I want it just like this, and you're really only getting a fraction of the talent and the skill and the value that they bring to the table. You want to be open and receptive to someone bringing a version of you out in your space that you didn't even know was possible. So if you're looking to hire a designer, definitely allow them to do what they do best. I think you'll be better. Your spaces will be better for it. And yeah, hopefully this gave you an opportunity to think about things differently. Thanks for having me on the box.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Go to afro.com, y'all. You're not going to be able to tell these good stories without your help.
Amen.
For less than 2 Uber Eats, because y'all ain't cooking. Or maybe y'all are cooking. Who knows? You can get a subscription to the Afro. Go to afro.com right now. We're waiting for you. We have so much free content. It's not a paywall up there. It's not anything that's keeping you from the information. The true information about the Black community is on the Afro. 132 years. And now, Claudia, you're officially in the Afro archive. So 132 years later, it won't be newspaper. It'll be video, right? And they'll be looking at video like it was newspaper, because it'll be something else, right? Because it will have evolved. But again, as we always say, please call a senior. They love to hear from you. You know what? You might not want to transform your space, but they might need their space transformed. I just thought of that. You might want to, especially the bathroom for the seniors. If they haven't not transformed or put a bar or something in there to help them in their bathroom space, that's a good idea, y'all. Call a senior and check on them and make sure they're okay. Until next time, Claudia, we're going to have you back for another Mind of Design or whatever we're going to call it. Jay Jackson, he's our new resident interior design. We didn't even know we had one.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh boy. Here we go.
All right. Well, you started it. So,
yeah.
And we're gonna finish it. And thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Smile and change your space. I'm gonna look at a color right now just to feel good. Yep, black. I love it. I feel good. Have a great day, everybody. Nice meeting you, Claudia.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.